In this series of videos, we're going to explore how to let go, how to release. When people think about wanting to let go of something, especially within a modern perspective, they tend to begin to intellectualize the process. Although there are a lot of systems of somatics and breath work and a lot of things that may or may not be super helpful. When we really want to cultivate the skill of letting go, we have to make it real and tangible. How do we do this? Well, we can't think about letting go, because when we begin to think, we're automatically coming from an overly intentional place. We are getting caught up in the thoughts and the feelings about what we are trying to let go of. And as long as we're thinking about something and stuck in our head, or we're just caught in a constant relivings of all of our emotions around something that we're holding on to, then there really isn't any release happening. Now, really letting go in a tangible, deep, sustainable, and uh, deeply nourishing way, in a way that will regulate the mind, the breath, the body very deeply, is much different than catharsis. Catharsis is stimulated or contrived. There's a build-up to a peak experience. Not going to go saying that there's anything necessarily wrong with it, but it doesn't lead to lasting results. When we experience catharsis, we're dipping into these layers of heightened emotional experience, usually led by either a stimulation of the nervous system and activation of what is really a fight or flight state within the body. And we're often feeding into this push and pull, and activating these accumulated layers of this holding and clinging and exciting. There is an excitation happening to where we go on this roller coaster of highs and lows. And it doesn't really get us anywhere in the end, because that heightened activity within the nervous system is only going to serve in the end to keep us wired for that peak experience. It's keeping us prone to that state of activation in relation to that system wide stimulation. We're reliving the experience, we're going back into that cycle of emotion, and we're not really ever surrendering and allowing the nervous system to fully release and come to a state of equilibrium. We're not ever reaching any skillful relation of mind and body to produce harmony and a deep, regulated state to where we can apply attention to a continuing, ever deepening process of surrender. This process I speak of is what allows things to, like meditation, to arise. It's not that when we meditate, we're just observing the thoughts come and go, and we're not just trying to still the mind. We're not trying to silence ourselves. We're not repressing our emotions. That doesn't work. It's just reaching, trying to suppress the system deeply. And although we might have to, in the moment, in day-to-day life, suppress some of our reactionary states, it's actually quite healthy to do so. We don't want to suppress until we repress the system to where we are stuck completely. This is the other end of the spectrum of catharsis. We're not unleashing the system totally into a peak experience. And we're also not wanting to just trap and stagnate and bind up the system. We're wanting to find a harmonious place, a harmonious state of being, and cultivate a skillful quality of mind and body to where we can see clearly and know, recognize through direct perception the quality of release tangibly in the body. Just like when we are bound up in the moment and caught up in any type of frustration or stress, any emotional turmoil, there is this clinging in the system. It's either this clinging onto this idea that drains us of energy and collapses us. We go sinking down and become excessively yin. We become depressed. We become uh, completely turned off. Or there's this excitation where we become overly yang. Again, this peak experience, this fieriness, this I'm sure there's lots of words for it, but this overexcited, overstimulated state of being, this quality in the nervous system that it's like we're on fire and we're totally in the active state. This harmony of active and passive are what is sought after within traditions that teach meditation in a classical sense, and also in things like classical Chinese medicine, within traditional yoga and systems of qigong and neigong. These practices learned how to harness this equilibrium, leading to equanimity, to be able to penetrate towards the truth of reality and become stable and grounded in the body in order to release the body, condition the body towards release, become so empty of these layers of stress and tension and acquired baggage and psychological distortion, which is the same as it's mirrored by the distortion, the tension, the contraction within our nervous system. Like the Buddhists use this word dukkha to mean suffering, most people say, but it's really like a distortion. It's a distortion on our lenses of perception, these layers through which we perceive the body and our reality, our day-to-day experience of life. So to create harmony, we have to become aware of how and where the mind is residing, where it's resting, and how its quality is. We need to be able to recognize the quality of mind that we're experiencing in any moment and how it's reflected on the quality of the body. And to keep the practice tangible and able to be perceived directly, we usually have a huge focus on the body. So, in the same way that these tensions that we hold, this clinging, this contraction, is just like anytime we're upset, we're caught up in emotion, we become like white knuckle or our shoulders tense up. Our center of mass, our breath, raises up. This is akin to what in classical Chinese medicine they might say as the qi rises. So we have, the spirit tends to become overactive, or it clings, it connects, it attaches to things, or it's aversion, experiences aversion to things. It's pulling in or it's pushing away. And there isn't this middle ground of neutrality. Yin and yang are tied up. They're not harmonious. There's no alignment, no space between them, creating harmony. One way we can experience this harmony of yin and yang, you could say, is to experience it in the posture, the physical posture of our body. One way to begin to practice this is by noticing where our center of mass resides. Now, if we're sitting comfortably sitting listening to this, then you can start to notice if you're to pick up your shoulders and lift your weight, your center of mass, up into the chest, away off of your seat, that this type of thing where the center's high in the chest, it's going to start to cause like anxious feelings. It's going to start to be stimulating. It's not very nice. And it's a lot nicer if we rest the weight onto our seat. Now, this can be as simple and as surface level at first as simply squeezing your fist and releasing it, like the common exercises that we practice, like a sort of a relaxation response that you might tighten and then let go of many different areas of the body in order to recognize that obvious surface level muscular tension and to release that muscular tension. That is a good start, but it's not going to penetrate deeply into the nervous system. For that, we need to utilize more of a cultivated and refined listening skill. And how we begin to cultivate that listening skill is by maybe utilizing the breath, maybe taking that release process a little bit more deeply into the body, but noticing that as we're sitting, we notice how the skull is sitting on top of the body. Is there space in the joints, the vertebrae of the neck, or are we collapsing the neck? Are we collapsing the abdominal cavity? Are we collapsed onto the solar plexus? Is that weight in our body not settling and sinking through into our seat or onto our feet, but is it kind of jutting out through the lower back? Are we habitually keeping it suspended like in a military posture? Are we lifting the shoulders up, keeping the chest risen up? There's a principle in Tai Chi they talk about as suspending the crown and also emptying the chest. To achieve this, we would want to at first physically pull up the head like we're being plucked up from the back of the crown of the head here. As we do that, we want to begin to soften around that intention we have of lifting the head. So we pick up the posture as if from the top of our head, or some people say like you have a book you're balancing here, and then you relax the tissues, becoming aware of the bone, the structure of the skeleton throughout the body. Is there space in the shoulders? Can we relax and release the shoulders down a little bit more? As we breathe, with that exhale, can we allow the tissues to soften throughout the abdominal cavity? Can we soften the mass of our shoulders away from the back of the skull? Can we soften the collarbone, the chest, down through the rib cage? Can we soften any tension we feel around the diaphragm, around the belly, the lower back, so that the weight of the body is not held up against gravity, but settles down into our seat? And if we lean forward, if we're not sitting cross-legged, if we're sitting on a chair like I am, we can even slightly bring the weight forward, maybe with the hands on the knees, relaxing the weight of the arms down into the hands, down onto the legs. Feeling that pressure of that sinking of our mass down in the body, allowing that pressure to reach the feet. Now, how, in a simple sense, do we remain upright in our posture? We need to be touching the ground. If we weren't touching the ground, there would be no force keeping us open and upright. We need to have both a downward and an upward force. And we can't really push into the ground to let go. We need to release into the ground. And as soon as we release all the way down to our seat or our feet, we can notice there will be this sense of support from the ground. And if we soften onto the ground, there will be this sense of something supporting or maybe lifting, filling, rising within. And we need to begin to soften the feet, the ankles, the legs, soften the flesh around the bones, allowing the bones to release away, allowing the joints in the body to have the flesh around them not so constricted and tight, but released. In any given moment, as we notice the body or we notice the breath, and as we release from the bottom of the body up, back into the torso, back into the shoulders, and allowing that uprightness to feed back into a support of the skull on top of the neck from the inside out. We can keep going up and down the body as I'm talking, just releasing, softening back down to the body. In any given moment, the nervous system is either clinging and contracting, or it's softening, releasing. The more deeply the mind can penetrate into, can soak into the body, like this is a sponge, this tissue is a sponge, and we're soaking the fluid of our attention into the body in order to soak and fill it, saturate it. We'll notice that the flesh has this heaviness to it, this yin aspect, this wet, heavy quality, like some sort of heavy clothing hanging on the what is it even called? Clothes hanger, right? It's like we have ourselves hooked up, and the skeleton is like a clothes hanger or like a tent pole, and we have this heavy fabric, this heavy clothing, this yin sinking tissue that is hanging off of the support of the skeleton. There's another quality of the separation of yin and yang in the body, this harmonizing, this equilibrium that's formed between yin and yang, that's spoken of in the internal martial arts, that is known as bones up, flesh down. And it's akin to a higher principle that the chi rises, or scratch that. The shen rises, the spirit rises, the chi sinks. The chi tends to rise. The chi wants to rise. The nervous system activity wants to be stimulated. The mind is always seeking activity and stimulation. And by our very nature, our patterning, our habits, we're always getting caught in thoughts, getting caught in our feelings, getting caught up in these layers of baggage, these accumulated layers that we tend to acquire throughout our life. So the energetics of the body are tending towards stimulation. They are tending towards fight or flight. So the chi of the body tends to become stressed, and it rises up to the head and tightens. It's why when we become stressed or angry or frustrated or upset, we tend to get like red in the face and our tissues tend to tighten. The blood and the chi move up and tighten. It's either this or we kind of dissociate. We become too passive and we collapse and let go, like a depressed state. And this is what we tend to know as relaxing, is when we are finally out of that fight state, that overstimulated state. There is this underwhelming, completely collapsed state that we tend to fall into. When we finally relax or we tend to move towards sleep, then we collapse. And this also is not good for the mind. It's not good for the energy because it's tuning the body, patterning the body towards collapse, which again obstructs blood flow. We are either obstructing things through this overly wound up, the chi rising with the spirit. The spirit is overstimulated, the chi is overstimulated. We become patterned in this manner. Or the chi sinks, we finally let go and just, bleh, and then the spirit sinks and collapses as well. What we want to do is remain aware, this listening skill. Think of when you hear something, if you were like out in the woods and you hear something, there's this perking up of the attention and there's this uprightness in the body. Like the body is an antenna, like somehow it's going to help tune us in to become still. We empty out so that we can take in more. We can receive more. We can listen more. Listening skill is just like this, but we can apply this to the journey inwards. We use that radar-like listening. We empty out of our unconscious intention, of our contrivance, our need for control, or to constantly govern things by what the ego and the sense of self wants to happen. We don't think about letting go. We don't get caught up in reliving all the feelings of letting go. We begin to listen. We begin to empty out. Those layers start to open up. There's more space between what we're observing and the consciousness, the observer itself. This is the application of attention instead of intention. There's always a place for intention as we begin our practice. We must have the intention to begin to listen. But as soon as we tune in and begin to listen to the body or engage this process of release, it is then about applying attention. Because attention is more and more, as we train and become skillful in listening, it's more and more empty of these distortions. So therefore, if we are stepping back, separating from and allowing this harmonization to take place via applying attention and listening, then those layers affect us less and less. They begin to dissolve away. There's a tuning, self-organizing type effect that begins to occur when we listen. Just like I said, when we are to tune into the environment in some way, the body adjusts. And this is how a lot of yoga, or the internal arts work, is it's not just about contriving and forcing the body into some sort of shape with the external musculature. It's about creating a deep synergy, a harmony between the mind and body, realizing through direct experience and knowing, and deep knowing quality, that the mind and body reflect one another. So therefore, the quality of the mind, if the mind is soaking into the body while releasing, softening, opening, then the body will also soften and open. If we are alert and awake, the body will remain upright. And at the same time, if we train the body, we train the tissues to remain upright. If we perceive space in the joints, we open and stretch the tissues. And we train and condition the body in that manner, not just through a push and a pull in the external musculature, but through a release within the nervous system and the soft tissues, through the mind interacting with the body. Then we will condition the body to be conductive to the mind, for the mind to be pulled into the body. and for the mind to be able to penetrate the space within the body more and more deeply. This creates a very profound result. This creates a transformation in mind and body that leads to equanimity and real transformation, because we're not just trying to let go of something, we are embodying a quality of letting go. We are creating the right conditions in our being to be able to deeply surrender and be at peace. Therefore, things like meditation will arise. That will arise through not intention and contrivance and trying really hard to do something, but having the mind in the right place, with the right sort of quality, our being through adjusting our lifestyle in a way that facilitates our ability to listen and let go, will create the right type of person, the right type of being where those states arise, where those qualities are harnessed, and where we can apply our mind to the body in a way that in the moment, any of that tension can be released and the body opens. We can go deeper and the body opens. And if we begin to transform the body into a comfortable, open, spacious place to be, then the mind can rest within the body. And if the mind can rest within the body and we can begin to harmonize with our consciousness, whatever is beyond the mind, whatever the mind is having filter through it, this purified state of awareness or attention, this is something higher, this is something deeper, right? What we might call the soul it starts to be involved in the process. And if we can begin to perceive from this place, that self-organization goes even deeper. There are things, experiences that arise which are profound, and they are not a contrived or governed or stimulated peak experience of the nervous system. It is something beyond the mind. This is what meditation is all about. But to get there, the training for meditation, which I would separate from meditation itself, meditation just arises. The practice that leads towards meditation is this ability to begin to abide calmly, because the body is in the right condition to do so. The ability for the mind to have these qualities of loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, for these things to arise and for them to be cultivated through our direct perception and knowing of how they facilitate this beautiful interaction and interrelation with the body. So in knowing that this is the root of our suffering, knowing that we suffer when the mind holds, clings, contracts, and binds us, it traps us, and knowing we can perceive that directly and create release, perceive spaciousness, create a sort of liberation, of freedom from what binds us, that is directly interrelating differently, dissolving away and transforming the underlying mechanics of the fight or flight state directly, and allowing us to be bit by bit, with direct perception of tangible results in the moment, and also over time, a cumulative result of this transformation that occurs, freeing us from our suffering. It's a beautiful thing. So I'll come back into exploring some more of these principles and exploring how we practice these things together. Feel free to like, subscribe, follow along, ask questions, ask for more information about dissolve therapy. Come have a session with me if you're interested in stepping onto the path and exploring how to develop the skills of listening and release. And I'll get some more videos up soon about learning how to practice this in basic ways so that it's approachable and digestible for just about anyone to be able to practice this stuff and have real tangible results. So, hope this was helpful. I hope it serves you well. Mm, Thank you for your time. Take care.